A few short weeks ago, Nintendo unveiled the full details of their expansion pack to the Nintendo Online service during an Animal Crossing New Horizons Direct. While the pricing and value of this service has been debated to death by seemingly everyone on the internet, I was more interested in talking about the games themselves. Pricing and worth of games and services are very subjective in my opinion, so I don't think I can productively add to that conversation any more than people already have. This video also won't get into the nitty-gritty of the quality of the emulation, as there are many videos on this topic from people far more knowledgeable than I am on the subject. In this video, I'm just going to go over each game in the service and try to give a short to the point mini review of each game. I played about half of these games before this service, and since the release, I have gone and played each game to varying degrees of completion. The games I did not finish, I gave an honest 2 to 3 hours of time to get a good feel to how they play as a game of its time and a game in the present day. The first game I want to talk about is actually the first game I booted up on the service, Starfox 64. I had never played the game growing up, but it always was on my mind as something I wanted to try, and I had no excuse not to once it came to the Switch. And good news, I thought Starfox 64 was a lot of fun. The inverted controls were a little hard for me to get used to at first, but I ended up figuring it out pretty quickly. The levels were short but engaging and always had a lot going on, but sometimes this made the game feel a little claustrophobic, causing in my opinion some unfair hits on my old R-Wing. One interesting thing I thought about this game is that you can actually lose an NPC ship in a level and they have to sit out the next whole level. This really motivates you to try to help your allies when they need it, adding in some extra stakes. Unless it's Slippy, of course. He's too needy, and he needs to learn to fend for himself.
Whoa! Help me! Whoa! Can you make it? Watch out, Fox! I'm monkey food if I don't leave.
The game has multiple story routes, and I think I only got the basic route of the levels, but maybe next time I'll try for a different route. The game's shorter runtime, though, makes this a more approachable task. Also, I didn't play the game this way, but there is even a cool first-person mode if you're interested.
Something's wrong with the G diffuser.
When I started looking at the games in the service, I was at least familiar with almost all of them, even if I hadn't played them. I got a recommendation to check out one of the games I hadn't heard of, Sin and Punishment, and decided to try it out completely in the dark. I didn't really know what kind of game it was when I decided to try to play it. Funny enough, it's actually a lot like Starfox 64. However, while in Starfox 64 I pretty much always understood what was going on the whole time, I cannot say the same about Sin and Punishment. It might be the craziest game I've ever played. I have absolutely no idea what the hell was going on, but it was a surprisingly fun game. It was an action-packed rail shooter that was consistently satisfying to play, other than some frustrating bosses. The game brings you level to level with cutscenes in between, and as hard as it was for me to follow along, it was still a fun game, and one that you can beat in one sitting, only taking me around 2 hours to get through, so I do recommend giving it a shot. Worth noting though, I don't know if it was just me that played it weird, but I had to hold the controller in a strange way to do what the game wanted of me. I'm not sure if more battle-hardened N64 veterans will have this problem or if they've even played this way, but it was a new experience for me. Funny side note, this game takes place in a post-apocalyptic near future of 2007. The first two games I talked about were new to me, but let's change things up with a game I've played countless times, Mario 64. I don't know about you, but when I think about the N64, I think about Mario 64. I love Mario, particularly 3D Mario, and it's always nice to go back into this classic and remember where it all started. It's just as fun the 100th time throwing the King Bomb-Omb on top of Bomb-Omb Battlefield, or just to throw that silly little penguin off the ledge. The camera control is not modern by any means, but it is workable in 90% of the levels. One late game level in particular comes to mind where it is a little bit of annoying to look where you want, But you don't really have to play that one too much if you don't want to. There are plenty of other fun stars elsewhere. I really do think Mario 64 is one of those games everyone should at least check out to gain an appreciation for the inspiration to countless games we've all come to enjoy. I can't recommend it enough. I'll probably play this game to completion a dozen more times in my lifetime.
Here we go!
Historically, I've had a hard time enjoying Dr. Mario because really I'm just really bad at it. And this holds true for Dr. Mario 64. I'm a big fan of Tetris, but this strange, puzzly take on it just doesn't work well in my brain. I end up getting super cluttered, and then the screen becomes an impossible mess to clean up. It just feels like an overly complicated version of Tetris to me. Surprisingly, Dr. Mario 64 actually has a story mode component as well. I was hoping maybe this would help pull me through it, but it didn't do much to motivate me to keep playing. You basically play a versus mode against a computer opponent trying to finish your viruses off before they can, sending junk to their screen along the way. The story was very silly in the little time I played, and honestly, if I were to play more, I wouldn't go back to the story, I would just stick to the arcade mode. Because of this, I actually recommend playing the NES Dr. Mario that is also on the service instead, if you want to get your Dr. Mario fix. I think the aesthetic is a little nicer with the pixel art on that one. This one might get me some flack, but unfortunately, I have trouble going back to Mario Kart 64 more so than other games from this era. After playing something as smooth as Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Mario Kart 64 just doesn't quite feel right. I'm not a fan of the drift physics, and the CPU rubber banding just feels a little too extreme and annoying to me. Don't get me wrong, it's still fun, it's still Mario Kart. I just don't see why I would play this one over some of the other options nowadays. It doesn't have the smoothness of Mario Kart 8, and it doesn't have the gimmicks of Double Dash or even the motion steering of Mario Kart Wii. Hell, it doesn't even have quite the nostalgic charm as that of Super Mario Kart. I just have the feeling if you didn't grow up with this one, it may not be worth your time. The thing I was most excited to do in this game was experience some of the tracks I played to death on Mario Kart 8 Deluxe in their original showing. Also, like any of the other games, co-op play is a lot of fun and can take your mind off some of the rougher edges. Yoshi's Story is a pretty short 2D platformer that almost plays like a mini collectathon. Instead of simply getting to the end of a level, you simply have to collect enough fruit to make the Yoshis happy. Doing this will turn the page to the next in the book. Each page is a few different levels to try, and this doesn't only change the gameplay, but quite literally changes Yoshi's story you get along the way. Overall, the game is pretty easy, but the last level has a couple of cheap spots that may catch you off guard. And in this game, once all the Yoshis are gone, you go back to square one, which is actually kind of punishing. Funny enough, the game actually presents some pretty serious stakes in the way it handles lives, which I found quite amusing, but also disturbing and terrifying. Instead of just having a floating Yoshi head with an X number of lives, you have a little group of different colored Yoshis to pick from when you start a level. Here's the kicker. If you die, that Yoshi gets carried off into this creepy castle to live the rest of its life in what I can only assume to be torture. I remember this really freaked me out as a kid, and having those strange memories rush back to the front of my brain when replaying this game was definitely a trip. But yeah, childhood memories aside, Yoshi's Story is a fun, quick platformer, and I think it deserves a try.
Mario Tennis!
Before we get started here, who the hell is this imposter? Mario Tennis is fun enough, but it kind of falls in the same boat as what I mentioned previously with Mario Kart. Mario Tennis Aces didn't rock the world by any means, but it was a solid, smooth tennis game, and Mario Tennis on the 64 is just a more simple, clunky version of that. There's a good amount of characters to choose from right from the start, and they all have the different categories they fall into with their strengths, such as power, technique, speed, etc. I'm a boring person, and normally just pick the all-around characters when given the option, so I rock my boy Luigi for a majority of my time here.
Here we go.
Overall, I did have a fun time, but like Mario Kart 64, the game is just maybe a little outclassed by its successors. For what it's worth though, playing this game for a little bit actually made me appreciate Mario Tennis Aces a little bit more. And fun fact for you Waluigi fans, this was actually his first game.
Waluigi!
Wow! Winback is an interesting game for sure. It is a third-person shooter that weaves in stealth and cover shooting, all while using just one analog stick. The controls are fine. You walk with the stick, and when you decide to aim, you stop moving and the stick controls the aiming. It works fairly well, but it's a little dated and limited compared to third-person shooters today. I don't think Winback is going to win you over if you aren't already a fan of third-person shooters, but if you enjoy games like this, it's fun to see how the games used to run before dual-stick control. The game is fairly linear as you move from one area to the next, sneaking, covering, and shooting down all in front of you. Each level will have checkpoints as you go to help keep progress, but the game does a good job making you feel tense when you're low on health, afraid to get sent back. I mean, just listen to this music. Right from the start, you have a couple weapons options, but I primarily chose to stick with the pistol as it has infinite ammo. The laser sight aiming was fun, and you can really take advantage of popping in and out of cover to see where the laser lands on an enemy. I really enjoyed my time with Winback. The control system is definitely of its time, and there have been more modern games that do basically everything it does better, but it's still an impressive game of its time. If for nothing else, the music itself is worth checking it out for. Where do I even start with Ocarina of Time? It was the blueprint for 3D adventure games in its time, and arguably one of the best games ever made, to this day being many people's favorite Zelda of all time, if not their favorite game of all time. It is one of the most highly regarded games ever made. For example, while it doesn't mean everything, it's hard to ignore the fact that it is the #1 rated game of all time on Metacritic, an aggregate review site, and the only 99 to be seen. Other than maybe Mario 64, Ocarina of Time is maybe the most synonymous with the Nintendo 64, a true breakthrough in game design and showed just what video games could be. And what at the time was about as close to an open world as you could expect, Ocarina of Time really has a sense of scale that was hard to get on the Nintendo 64. Environments range from wide open fields to compact claustrophobic rooms, bringing you to intimidating volcanoes, puzzling forests, wide open lakes, and much more. Towns are fun to explore, with dozens of NPCs to interact with along the way. Tons of classic Zelda songs either originated here or were improved upon here. I originally played Ocarina of Time on the GameCube on the Master Quest bundle. Switch Online was my first real experience playing with an N64 controller, other than as a young child with no concept of what I was doing. If you haven't played this game before, it might be a little hard to get a handle on things. Sure, Z-targeting was a great system of its time, but there are better camera controls now. The game's frame rate leaves a lot to be desired, but the game is slow enough to where that isn't the biggest problem in the world. Hardware limitations aside, the game design holds up today for a truly deep, adventurous experience. The game's many dungeons create a sense of dread and wonder that games today trouble to meet. Secrets are around every corner, and the story itself was impressive for its time. This game set the standard for years to come, and games today still try to emulate what it did over 20 years ago. I implore you to give it a shot, fight through the growing pains that you may have with the controls, and enjoy one of the best games ever made. So there we have it. I think the 9 games offered here are pretty quality overall, but there is definitely room for more games. There's a lot of future games that are coming to this service that have already been announced, like Paper Mario and Zelda Majora's Mask, and I hope Nintendo keeps adding more games beyond what they've already announced. Depending on how Nintendo handles the distribution of these games, I may make another one of these videos in the future. Let me know if you like any of the games offered here, or if you have any experience with them back at the N64, or what games you want to see added to the service. Consider leaving a like, dislike, or a comment on the video if you made it this far too. Thanks for watching, it means a lot. See you next time.